Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. The Israeli military carried out strikes targeting senior Hamas leaders in the Qatari capital Doha on Tuesday, marking the first time Israel has tried to assassinate members of the group in the Gulf state. Hamas said in a statement that the strike failed to eliminate their main negotiating team, led by Khalil al-Hayya, but said Hayya's son and a number of other members were killed. Hayya, one of several senior Hamas members to live in Qatar, was the target of the strike, according to Israeli media. The attack came a day after Qatari officials met with Hamas to discuss a U.S. ceasefire and hostage deal, and 2 days after U.S. President Donald Trump issued a, quote, final warning to Hamas to release the hostages from Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel acted alone in the strike and reiterated his acceptance of Trump's terms for a ceasefire in Gaza during a speech later on Tuesday. For his part, Trump criticized Israel for targeting Hamas within Qatar, citing the Gulf states' work towards a ceasefire and calling them an ally. But he also praised Israel for seeking to eliminate Hamas's leadership. Trump said that he warned Qatar before the attack, but Qatari officials said the warning came after the bombing began. Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani told reporters that the status of the Gaza talks is unclear following Israel's actions. Gulf states were quick to express solidarity with Qatar. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry said the kingdom is placing, quote, all its capabilities at Qatar's disposal, while UAE Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan condemned what he called the, quote, cowardly Israeli attack. Turkey, which notably hosts several Hamas officials itself, likewise condemned Israel. In this episode, we'll hear from Al Monitor contributors about the significance of the Israeli strike in Qatar and what comes next for the region. Hope you enjoy. Israel has targeted Hamas leaders before, namely in Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon, but also in Iran, where then political chief Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in July of last year. However, the decision to strike Hamas in Qatar is new. Qatar is a major non-NATO ally of the U.S., and the country hosts thousands of U.S. troops at the Al Udeid airbase. Here's Al Monitor's Rina Basist on why Israel made the decision to hit Hamas in Qatar, and what it means for how Netanyahu's government views the Gaza talks.
Two possibilities. The first one is that the Netanyahu government is not interested in reaching a deal with Hamas, because clearly after this attack in Qatar, Hamas reject the Trump proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza and for a hostage release. The second possibility is that the Netanyahu government estimates that in any case, Hamas is not interested in reaching a deal. And indeed, representatives of Hamas have said this weekend that they cannot release all the hostages on the first day of the ceasefire. We're referring to this latest proposal by President Donald Trump. So it could be that for Israel, since Hamas in any case does not want to reach a deal, then the interest of Israel would be to continue this campaign, which is started shortly after October 7th, to eliminate all Hamas leaders, whether in the Gaza Strip or abroad, including in Qatar.
The fact that Israel has now targeted Hamas in Qatar is something Turkey is watching closely. Hamas leaders spend time in Turkey, begging the question of whether Israel might target them there. Here's Al Monitor's Ezgi Akin in Ankara on how Turkey views the strike.
The strike sent shockwaves through Turkey as it did internationally. Turkey's foreign ministry condemned it as a blatant violation of international law. According to some unconfirmed reports, certain Hamas political figures targeted in Doha had traveled there from Turkey for ceasefire discussions. Ankara doesn't recognize Hamas as a terror outfit, and the militant group's political leaders divide their time between Turkey and Qatar. Following the attack, it is likely that some Hamas members would spend even more time in Turkey. This, in turn, sparked some international commentary about whether Israel could strike Hamas members in Turkey or not. However, these sort of speculation are largely dismissed in Turkey, in fact, with a slide of ridicule, if you will. Turkey is a NATO member country, and this makes any direct Israeli military action in the country highly unlikely. In fact, in the months following the October 7th attack, Ronan Bar, the then head of Shin Bet, vowed to target Hamas members wherever they are, whether they are in Lebanon, Qatar, or Turkey, and this prompted a harsh response from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He warned that Israel would pay a heavy price in case of such scenario. Following the exchange, we saw a series of espionage busts against alleged Israeli intelligence networks operating in Turkey. That being said, Ankara has been really cautious not to turn Hamas' presence in Turkey into a fresh controversial front with Israel at a time when the tires already hit rock bottom. For example, last year, when some Biden administration officials claimed that the militant group had moved its political bureau to Turkey from Qatar, Turkish officials strongly denied those claims. And while Ankara allows Hamas members to reside in the country, it maintains a low-profile approach, avoiding any public attention or official acknowledgement of their presence.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al-Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al-Monitor to follow what leaders and decision-makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25, for a discount.
Okay, we're back. The strike could have major ramifications for the Gulf. Tensions between the UAE and Israel were already high, with an Emirati official saying last week that the potential Israeli plans to annex the West Bank are, quote, a red line, one of the biggest signs yet of discord within the Abraham Accords countries. Gulf states are getting along relatively well at the moment, as Qatar has repaired its relations with its neighbors since the diplomatic crisis ended in 2021. But Qatar has now faced 2 attacks on its soil this year, the other one being the Iranian strike on U.S. forces at Al Udeid in June. Here's Pentagon correspondent Jared Zuba on the security significance of another attack in Qatar for U.S. foreign policy.
Well, it's important to note, the second foreign attack on Qatari soil in less than 3 months. Now, that's something unprecedented for the small Gulf monarchy, which has sought in recent years to position itself on the international stage as a neutral mediator for regional conflicts. And what's more, the strikes occurred while Qatar was hosting indirect negotiations between Hamas and Israel, or rather preparing to host another round of negotiations towards a ceasefire in Gaza at the request specifically of the United States, as the Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al-Thani pointed out this evening. And already senior Arab diplomats to whom I've spoken have drawn parallels to Israel's surprise air offensive launched against Iran in early June, which, of course, kicked off as the Trump administration was pursuing diplomatic negotiations with Prime Minister Pezeshkian's government over its nuclear enrichment. Now, President Trump said in a post on Truth Social this evening that he had nothing to do with Prime Minister Netanyahu's decision and regretted the fact that the attack took place inside Qatar. The White House is very careful to distance itself from the method employed by the Israeli military for this assassination, but it's safe to say that there's really no love lost here in Washington for the 5 Hamas officials killed. The real question is what this will do to U.S.-Qatari and U.S. Gulf relations, and more broadly for U.S. ambitions for a sort of expanded Abraham Accords of Arab states normalizing with Israel. There are some concerns that this could entangle the path which the Trump administration, at least broadly, suggests it's interested in seeing, primarily to have Saudi Arabia be the next country to normalize ties with Israel. Major regional players like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are likely shedding no tears for Hamas. But the precedent of the Israeli airstrikes in the Gulf could put the prospect of further normalization with Israel further in question. I mean, I think it's safe to say it's already on thin footing amid talk in Israel about potentially annexing the West Bank. You saw leaks out of the Emirati meetings with Saudi officials that may significantly complicate the Emirati relationship with Israel. But at the bilateral level, between the United States and Qatar, zooming back in, Qatar is not just home to the largest U.S. military airbase in the Middle East. CENTCOM's forward headquarters is based out of the Kayak at Al Udeid, but it's also a major U.S. non-NATO ally. Now, the U.S. does not have a defense treaty with Qatar, or with Israel for that matter, a mutual defense treaty, but major non-NATO ally status is a formal designation, and ideally Washington strategists should want that to mean something. And think about it another way. If you're a senior CENTCOM commander, your mission strategically is to piece by piece, diplomatically lay the sinews of intelligence cooperation and military interoperability and exercises to bring Arab states together with Israel to form broader bulwark against Iran. And you, one day, get intelligence indicating that an ally in the region, an Arab ally, is going to be attacked, not from a mutual adversary or a non-state actor terrorist group like the Houthis, but by one of your own strategic partners, Israel, no less. What do you do? And I think, unfortunately, in this case, it looks like that notification came too late.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.